94 Rocks, the Dark, JC here, hanging out. And by the way, don't forget, Loonfest is coming up on Friday, the 18th, in Brainerd, Minnesota, featuring Buck Cherry, and also a band called Venrez the Band, which we play here on 94 Rocks. And right now, I am talking to the lead singer and the founder of that band, Ven. Ven, first of all, thanks for joining us on The Dark tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about your band and that. And how did this all come about, I guess? Give us the history, I guess, of Venrez.
Well, it was really pretty interesting. When I was 17, growing up in the Encino Hills of the San Fernando Valley, I had a friend that played guitar pretty well, and he knew a drummer and bass player that were rich kids. And we started jamming in the drummer's rehearsal room. And then, doing David Bowie covers and stuff back at that time period. It sounded pretty good, but after a couple months, they all flaked out. And at that time, there wasn't a wealth of musicians, in the LA area to even try to continue. So I just moved on with my life, flash forward a few decades later, I put a PA in my house, and when I would get home from work, I would plug in a playlist and just sing and dance around, for about an hour, which was a lot of fun, kept me in shape. And I had a friend who was a singer-songwriter staying with me for a brief period of time. And we had a mutual friend who's a producer and great keyboard player and had a studio at his house. And Tommy, who was living with me, had borrowed his drill. Lance called me at work and asked me if he could come pick it up. And I said, sure, I'll leave the door unlocked. So I'm about halfway through my little karaoke set, and I felt a presence behind me. So I had stopped, and I turned around. His mouth was wide open. And these guys have been friends with me for about 15 years, but I never let any of them know I could sing. And he's like, we got to go in the studio. And I'm like, no, I'm too old. Anyway, they pressured me into doing that. And Tommy was good friends with Jason Womack. Jason had played bass for about 3.5 years with Juliette Lewis and the Licks. Great bass player, phenomenal guitar player. And, helped write a couple of her hits. And Tommy and Lance kind of helped put a band together. And Tommy kind of talked Jason into coming in on guitar. And somebody else was writing the music and the lyrics. And the music was okay. The lyrics were extremely lame. And he was just over, and we were doing some two-piece stuff, and we went out on my balcony, and I said, hey, man, what do you really want to do with your life? And he said, I want to do music full-time. And I shook his hand, and I said, let's do it. And we just fired everybody. and we wrote a record. We don't acknowledge it as True Venrez. It's called Witch's Brew because, it was kind of like our statement of freedom. So a lot of different songs that didn't really kind of flow within the same type of genre as everything after that. And we had, different people playing at that particular time. So we brought in Ed Davis, the former drummer from Juliet, Michael Bradford on bass, who was a childhood friend of Jason from Jackson, Mississippi. And we had Don Teschner from Rod Stewart, amazing musician. Mm-hmm. He played everything, guitar, lap steel, mandolin, violin, viola. And as we were getting, and they tricked me into playing a show. I kept saying, no, this is a hobby. I don't want to do that. But they tricked me into playing a show at, back then was the Key Club. It's now a dance club. And I went out for my first live performance of my entire life, on a Saturday night, 10:30 to a sold-out house. And next thing I knew, we were on tour with Alice Cooper and then Slash, and we just started making an awful lot of noise. And then after a Euro tour in 2018, we'd had a different rhythm section, and the drummer and the bass player were fighting all the time. So I fired them and held some auditions. And that's when I found Victor Singer on drums from France, who was 25 then. He's 29 now. Mm-hmm. Gabe Masca on bass. He's 30 now. He was 26 at the time. And I finally had the rhythm section I'd always dreamed of. And we did a few Western regional tours to get the guys kind of used to playing live with Jason on guitar and me on vocals. And then in the last quarter of 2019, we toured with the reunited Tracy Guns with Phil Lewis, LA Guns. Mm-hmm. And boy, those guys, they were playing songs recorded by other guys, but they made them their own. And we just had an amazing tour. We were on fire. We went right in the studio after New Year's Eve. We played the Whiskey A Go-Go with LA Guns, which kind of culminated the tour. And unfortunately, around March, as we all know, that pandemic hit and everything shut down. So in April of 2021, Jason and I were just writing like madmen. I think between March of 2020 and January of this year, we wrote and recorded 64 demos.
Wow.
On top of about another 20 songs we recorded with the band before the pandemic. So we got to April of 2021, and I'm thinking, I'm going to be another year older in January. And I don't know if I have it in me, to go out there and try to get to where we should be now. And Jason was over. We put my vocal on a new demo. I do all my vocals at my home studio. He has a studio at his house, too. And I was really thinking about telling him do this anymore. And so I went up to the studio where, after a few hours of him mixing and stuff, and he was doing a drop so we could listen to it. And, he has his desk with the Mac computer for the recording studio. There's another desk for my office. And I logged on my email, and there was a recording contract offer from Pavement Entertainment in Chicago, Sony rock label. They've got Ted Nugent, Dishwalla, Candlebox, Puddle of Mud. And I thought to myself, I kind of chuckled in my brain. I thought, well, it's not over. It's just beginning,
Wow.
And I said, hey, Jason, guess what? Here's a recording contract. So we signed with Pavement, and we went in the studio. The thing was, I sent them about 18 songs. I had a hell of a lot more. They picked out 6. 2 of them were already recorded with my regular drummer, Victor Singer, from France. He had to go back during the pandemic on his work permit. There was just no work. Nobody was working.
Right.
But France wouldn't let him leave the country, and all the studios were closed there. So he couldn't do the tracks remotely. So I called my good friend Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction, the drummer from that great band. And I said, hey, man, I just got a new record deal, and my drummer can't leave France, and I got to record 4 tracks, and thought I'd call you first. And he was like, I'm down, let's do it. So Perk drummed 4 of the 6 tracks on the EP, and now we're about to go out and do our first tour behind that 6-song EP for Pavement with Buck Cherry.
Well, it should be a great time when you're coming up here in just a matter of a week or so. And, of course, you mentioned that tour are going to get underway here very shortly. I want to go to your current song we're spinning here on 94 Rocks. It's called Each and Every Day. Give us a little history about that song, Ven, and kind of what's the meaning behind it?
Well, I did move. I was born in L.A. I lived there my whole life till January. I moved to Las Vegas, but right when the George Floyd horror happened, and if you all remember, we had this first huge riot in Los Angeles, and then I was actually living on the fourth floor with a sun deck facing 3rd Street, which is where the first riot occurred. And that just really shook me up. It was absolutely crazy. It shattered and shook my feeling of safety, the ability to defend my home. And they just absolutely destroyed my entire neighborhood. It left me speechless. And I'm so anti-violence and so anti-war. And I was so deeply affected by all of that. And, that was followed by the BLM riots and, running through the streets, creating more havoc at the time. And I'm not voicing my opinion for or against any of that. I'm not a political guy talking. I let my songs speak for me. So I usually take a shot at government and tyranny on every record, but that situation got me to sit down and write each and every day, which was a combination of experiencing all those riots and combining my feelings about war, and just seeing the division of people in my city and in my country at the time, our country, which I think is still in effect. There's that one line in the song is, when division is accepted as harmony, that is the day none of us are free. And, I think that's one of the more powerful lines that really defines what I'm writing about in that song. And also, Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction is on drums on that song. It was mixed by phenom producer and engineer Malcolm Springer in Nashville, who's produced and mixed so many radio hits for so many big bands, most of the Matchbox 20 hits and many others. And we're going to get the 4th week radio results of that later this afternoon. Week 1, we were at 76 on the SMR rock chart. Week 2, we jumped to 54 last week. Week 3, we jumped to 47. That chart is a top 50 chart.
Yep.
So we're looking to crack the top 40 this week. We had our first single, Show Me, that released several months ago. And that actually hit, 16 on the chart. So we may very well, it looks like, have 2 songs off a 6-song EP that are top 40 rock radio hits, which I'm pretty honored and humbled by.
Absolutely. I'm glad that we're a part of that, too, and that's why we play Venrez here at 94 Rocks. Hey, I know we got to get going here because obviously you got to get ready for last rehearsal and get ready for, obviously, your upcoming shows. But for our listeners that are going to be going up to the Brainerd Lakes area to see you play on Friday, August 18th at the Armory, tell them why they should come and see Venrez.
Well, it's a 4-piece band. It sounds like a 6-piece. That's just in-your-face raw, and we're kind of like a modern Alice in Chains on steroids, although we're current. We are just so different and tight, I think, that it's worth every penny of the ticket to see us with Buck Cherry.
Ben, I look forward to meeting you in person and also hanging out with you and, more importantly, getting to see you play live in front of us. Thanks so much for joining me today.
It's my absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to see you at the show.
Once again, that's Ven from the band Venrez. Their latest song is Each and Every Day. You're hearing it right now. It's on the dark. It's 94 Rocks.